A bill in Nebraska would give renters property tax relief, even though their landlords are the ones who own the property. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today. It's coming out of my home state of Nebraska. Now, I own all of my rental properties here in Nebraska, so this story actually is quite interesting. So recently, the governor of Nebraska decided he wanted to try to fix our property tax issue. And for those who don't know, Nebraska has some of the highest property taxes in the entire country. Our property taxes are outrageous considering that the housing here is relatively affordable. Now, every time I talk about how affordable it is here in Nebraska, you know, I get somebody, oh, no, it's so expensive here now. And I'm like, I am talking about in terms of comparison's sake to other places. I'm not talking about how it was 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. Okay, yes, housing was cheaper here in Nebraska 10 years ago. Anybody could tell you that. Housing was cheaper everywhere 10 years ago. But the real question is, right, how do we compare right now in 2024 to other states around the country? And in terms of right now, we are one of the most affordable places to live in the United States, period. It's part of the reason I live here in the Midwest, because it's cheap. It's cheap. Now, the drawback to that is that we have high property taxes, and those taxes, they pay for our schools, our roads, etc. But, you know, I feel like I have lived in other states before. I've lived in Kansas. Our property taxes in Kansas were way cheaper than they are here in Nebraska. And they're very comparable states, okay? The property taxes in Missouri, where I owned rental property, were way cheaper. They were like half of what I pay for the property taxes here in Nebraska. Literally half, okay? So does it make a lot of sense? No. And the governor of Nebraska decided he wanted to fix it. So he put this plan together to give property tax relief to the property owners here in the state. The only problem is that now we have politicians who are like, oh, this isn't fair for renters. Renters won't get anything out of it. No, they're not going to get anything. Okay, the way the property taxes work is if you own a property, you know, you pay less of your money to the government. So the people who want to give this money to the tenants, right, they're not cutting out the amount, they're lowering the amount that they have to pay. They are just giving them a bonus of cash. You know, it's like, oh, now you get an entitlement. You know, like, I never understood, like, these socialist politicians, they all of a sudden, you know, rather than simply put, it's like they want to screw over the people who work hard, the people who invest in real estate, and the people who own businesses, okay? It's like that's their intention, and they want to give free handouts to people who, quite honestly, aren't contributing nearly as much, okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, and leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. Do you think that renters, tenants, should be allowed to get a credit or, you know, a refund or whatever they plan here, property tax relief? Okay, do you think that's a good idea? I mean, honestly, I don't. Okay, I don't give a crap if a person is a tenant. So the way it works in my mind is you give the landlord tax relief, the landlord doesn't have to charge as higher rent, so the tenant ends up benefiting anyway. They don't need a refund on top of that. Okay? Gee, like, these people are idiots. Anyway, let me get into this article, and they'll have a good explanation of what's going on. This article is coming from the Nebraska Examiner, and it says, renters would get some relief too under a pair of legislative proposals. Okay, let's see what it says. Nebraska renters would get some financial relief in the form of an income tax credit under a pair of proposals to be considered by the legislature. State Senators Terrell McKinney of North Omaha and Elliot Bostar of Lincoln each introduced a bill Thursday seeking to compensate renters who otherwise would not automatically reap any direct benefit from the property tax reforms being pushed by Governor Jim Pillen. McKinney said that while landlords would achieve property tax relief, it is not a given they would pass that relief on to their renters. It's not fair, he said. Not fair, my butt, okay? That's completely ridiculous. So this is what he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand the math. First of all, right? The whole reason, like, if you look at the proposal, like, I'm going to go just shortly over the proposal that the governor has proposed here in Nebraska. And basically, he's talking about increasing fees, increasing the sales tax in order to give property tax relief, and, really looking through the budget and making some cuts, just doing everything he can, and I realize that, he's not going to be able to make a huge difference, but even if it's a 10% cut, it would be significant. So my house that I live in right now, I pay about $1,000 a month just in property taxes. So a 10% cut to that would be about $100 a month off of my property tax bill. So if you look at a rental property and, obviously my rental properties, the property taxes aren't going to be as high as the home I live in, right? But let's say you're paying $500 a month in taxes for your rental property, right? And then you get $50 off of that. Well, they're like, well, you're not going to cut the rents. No, I'm not going to cut the rents, right? But I'm going to probably increase the rents at a slower rate, because I got that property tax relief, because my expenses did not increase as much as they were previously. So yeah, going forward into the future, you're going to have a lower rent than if they keep the property taxes high. And so keeping that in mind, I don't see any reason to give a tenant any sort of tax credit. Remember, a landlord, somebody like me, I'm going to use the money that I save. I'm going to reinvest that money back into the community, possibly by improving the properties that I already have or by buying more properties. The tenant, on the other hand, is going to use their income tax credit to buy, junk. So it will not contribute as much to the economy as what I will do. Okay. So this is, an issue where I say, hey, I don't think that we need to be giving people something that really don't need it. And keep in mind also that a lot of landlords, they're middle class and higher. So they're already part of the tax base that pays, all of the taxes. Whereas a lot of renters are in the lower income classes and they already receive huge tax refunds, and a lot of them receive a lot less, or they receive more back from in terms of tax rebates than they pay in. So then you want to give them more. That makes no sense. It doesn't make any sense. I think the correct solution would be to focus on the property owners. They're the ones who need the relief. The tenants were sitting there and saying, hey, I need relief from these taxes I have to pay. No, they were not dealing with the taxes at all directly, and that makes it a lot easier for them. So yeah, the landlords are the ones who need direct relief, and then we'll pass that on to the tenants in terms of slower rent increases as time goes by. With about 60% of his constituents in rental homes, McKinney said, we have to think about renters and how property tax and property tax relief affects them. McKinney's Legislative Bill 20 calls for a refundable credit against income tax to renters of 4% of total annual rent, or $200, whichever is greater, not to exceed $1,000. Under Bostar's Legislative Bill 14, renters will get a credit of 5% of their lease expenses during the taxable year. So one person is proposing a 4% refund of expenses. The other one is proposing a 5%. But you know what? Writing a blank check, basically that part of the thing could make this whole thing too costly for the state. It could throw all the numbers off and completely destroy the property tax reforms that the governor is proposing. I do think they need to handle property taxes, but I personally believe that the solutions they came up with don't go far enough, okay? And let me explain real quick, and then we can end this video, okay? I'm just gonna say this, right? The biggest expense for a business, what is it? It is human resources. It is staff. We are paying our staff too much. We have unfunded or underfunded pension obligations. We have a lot of, basically they need to trim the fat. They need to eliminate staff. They need to rework their pension system. They need to rework their pay system in order to make sure that their expenses are much lower, because you can drown in all of these socialist programs, okay? Like my solution to Social Security is to replace, do exactly like the businesses did, replace a defined benefit pension with a defined contribution 401k type system. That's my solution to the insolvency of Social Security, which we're going to face within the next 10 years. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm off on a rant. Anyway, I think that, this is a bad idea. Let me know what you think in the comments down below.